I think there is no comparison to AI. Like, this is the first time we have a reasoning, thinking solution that all the others did not have, and also this is infiltrating everything in our world.
If there is no data, there is no AI. I think we forget about all of this. And it's actually impacting all industries. If you look at it, I think it's quite a revolutionary thing.
They are leveraging AI to build like an AI startup. And some of these companies have accelerated greatly within a very short period of time with a really lean team. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of our Tech Chronicles podcast. As always, we have another really exciting topic for you all. We are going to talk about staying relevant in the age of AI. Today, we also have a very special guest who's joining us. We will introduce him in a second, but I wanted to quickly go through like what we are going to cover today. We are going to go through the AI landscape that it is today. Then we are going to talk about how and what type of skills and roles are getting disrupted by AI. Then we'll kind of talk about around what it means to stay relevant, which is our topic in the age of AI. Future proofing your skills so that like you are setting yourself up for success in the future. And finally, we will have like some tips for individuals as well as leaders in order to how to adapt and build AI augmented careers. All right. So before we start, I have a quick icebreaker. It's a two-part question. I will start answering it once I ask it, and then both Sean and Harish, you guys can answer. So, what is your favorite AI tool, and what is one mindset to ditch? I will start. I'm biased towards ChatGPT because that is my go-to tool for everything. So, if you ask me what my favorite AI tool these days, it is ChatGPT. One mindset to ditch is that I would say start with like leveraging AI for everything. Don't stick to your traditional ways. Use AI as much as possible. My suggestion is to ditch like the old way of thinking in like how you do things and how you used to do things. What about you guys?
So I actually like Gemini now because I think there is no one tool that we can say is the best. But I think it's interesting how Google has come back. In terms of something that we can do better, I always say is sometimes we get used to these tools and then we tend to overuse them. So I think what we can do better is we need to see how we can leverage those tools, but we should not lose our human thinking around that. So that's something I thought might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was going to say something similar. My favorite tool is like, I agree, ChatGPT, and I'm also starting to like Gemini. I also use Grok. I'm kind of addicted with these tools, to be honest. That is also the reason I feel like I should not be over reliant on that. Sometimes I feel like my brain isn't working. I need to ask it. But to Aresha's point, if I put it in an analogy, like, don't try to memorize songs, but learn how to read music tones, right? So similarly, need to understand how AI thinks. How do I use the tool to learn more new things?
Awesome. That's a great start. With that being said, Sean, why don't you introduce Harish to our audience?
I cannot wait to introduce Harish Pereira. He's a very long time friend. I wouldn't say old friend. We go long way back. Harish Pereira is a pretty prominent figure in Sri Lanka right now. He's the offering leader for enterprise technology, performance, and customer at Deloitte Sri Lanka and Maldives. He has extensive experience consulting in various domains: banking, insurance, telecommunication, apparel, professional services. That's where we kind of met in the US and in Sri Lanka. He brings deep industry insights into complex digital transformation programs and projects. And also, I must say, he's an avid learner. Very often he shares what he learned that day, like 4 or 5 times a day. So he's always on top of new things. So very happy to have you, and Harish, thank you for spending time with us.
Great to be on the podcast. And thank you, Yuresh and Shan, for inviting me. And happy to have a good conversation on this subject.
Thank you so much, Harish, for joining us. We are truly honored and lucky to have you on our podcast. All right. So with that being said, let's dive into our agenda today. So let's start with the overall AI landscape today, right? Where AI is making waves across industries. Who wants to go first?
Okay, so maybe I'll start and then y'all can chip in. So if you take, I think AI, which we talk about, for me, if there is no data, there is no AI, right? I think we forget about all of this, right? And it's actually impacting all industries if you look at it, right? I think it's quite a revolutionary thing. I think we are all used to the internet, some of those changes that have happened. I think in the future, we may not even call it AI because when we have electricity, we plug our equipment and it works. And in the future, I think we'll be interacting with these things most of the time, and AI is going to be part of everything. I think all of us, we have been using Google Maps, for example, right? And who looks at any traditional maps unless you're lost somewhere and still you're not connected? But I think we all know AI is included that way, and we take it for granted. Now, for example, if you take the industries, which I think may be relevant, there have been major impacts in, if you take banking. So, for example, if you take banks, I think now you can see major fraud detection patterns being automated using AI, much more what we call hyper personalization, right? To offers can be sent, and you can interact with any bank 24 by 7 because you don't need the human always, but the human is always there. And I thought another industry that is useful is healthcare. I think drug discovery, diagnostics, how things are being done, uh, speeding up in terms of research, I think is a major breakthrough, right? Imagine if you want to do traditionally some research, it takes 10 years. I think with this AI modeling tools, we can do things far faster, right? So that's the profound change that AI brings. But I'm sure I would like to hear your thoughts too. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree and very insightful. I would also say, if in terms of the impact it makes, I don't like people comparing it with saying this is similar to dot-com age or this is similar to invention of blockchain or calculator sometimes. I think there is no comparison to AI. Like, this is the first time we have a reasoning, thinking solution that all the others did not have, and also this is infiltrating everything in our world. So there is no comparison. And also, I'd like to quote like what Elon Musk was saying about humanoid robots impact on global GDP. I mean, there's the concept of GDP if the countries create these robots at will, right? So similarly, same thing can be applied on companies too. A 5-member team can disrupt a massive company using this AI because now they can build things at scale and volume and unthinkable areas. So I think we are fortunate, in my opinion, to be part of this revolution.
Yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable. Great points from both of you. I was going to echo on what Sean said too. One of the industries that has impacted greatly, and not necessarily just an industry, but startups, right? So there's a tremendous amount of startups coming up now with a very lean team, right? They are mostly focused on, not some are focused on AI. So they are leveraging AI to build like an AI startup, right? And some of these companies have accelerated greatly within a very short period of time with a really lean team. Um, um, Windsurf is a great example. Sean, we were talking about this the other day. I was watching this interview by the CEO of Windsurf. He was talking about how they managed to stay lean for the longest time. So, like the traditional way of thinking for a startup to like raise like massive amounts of funds because they need like a ton of resources to kind of get something executed in a timely fashion is not an obstacle anymore. So it is definitely revolutionizing everything around us, and it's kind of amazing to see how it all kind of like is forming together. So yeah, like that. I think that to our next topic around, like how is AI disrupting the traditional skills and roles that we are typically used to?
Yes. So maybe if you take about the disruption, as you rightly said, you brought an important point about lean teams, right? We call in consulting flipping the pyramid, right? So now you can get more done. And sometimes in the future, we will have what we call digital workers working side by side. So what I think you can look at is from a skills perspective, we can look at automation of routine tasks. the boring stuff that we don't like to do. We can get the use of AI to do that. I think if you take roles, it's something that's going to evolve. There are new roles that will be created. For example, need to train this workforce on using these tools responsibly and also make sure they get the right outcomes. So I think new roles like AI trainers will come in. We talk about ethics, so we need ethics officers, we need data related roles. And the key aspects, I think, in terms of the skills is we will see that there is less memorization that is required and more what we could talk about critical thinking, problem solving, those aspects I think will come to the front. And typically, we have managers, and even those roles are now going to change because I think now those hierarchies with flipping of the pyramid is going to, remove some of the layers. So I think even some of the senior folks, right, will have to be using these tools, right? Rather than getting your analyst to do the research, we can do what we call self-service. So I think, the game has changed, and people who, the way I look at it is people will be replaced who don't know AI skills by the people who know AI skills. So upskilling, reskilling, unlearning, and relearning, I think is the new mandate. What do you guys think?
Well said, Harish. Like unlearning, relearning, totally agree. In fact, unlearning is a must because I still talk to some developers who are like avoiding AI like a plague, saying, I don't want to get into that. I want to just use my brains. And I'm afraid I think those developers will soon become dinosaurs if they are not adopting AI. At the same time, Harish, what you were saying about jobs that includes like governance roles, they are on the rise. I saw in the statistics like 60% of the companies are hiring more governance side of AI. That's pretty remarkable compared to 17% last year, so it's huge leap. And also I was going to say, I mean, a lot of people use AI for content creation and things like that, but I think where the companies are currently racing towards is how do we use AI to create value and capture value from a company point of view. So any skill set that we have on how to use AI to be relevant in the business, I think that's going to be the key.
Yeah, and like I think agentic AI is playing like a huge role in that, right? We talked quite a lot about like a typical workplace type of like an impact with these roles and skills being revised and replaced at certain levels. But it's not necessarily limited to companies as such, right? Like it is across like every dimension that you can think of. I mean, robotics, for example, has been there for quite a while now, right? But I think we will see like a huge acceleration and boom on the robotics side because of the age of AI, or like the capabilities that are being put forward, that are enabled through AI to that'll impact like your household. Like I was watching this video like a couple of days ago. It was a demo of like a robot doing house cleaning, right? It's kind of like the iRobot vacuum multiplied by 1,000 type of like a capability, right? Like it's going from like one room to the other, cleaning all these things, like putting
Loading the dishes.
in the dishes, if you find like things that you can throw away, like it's throwing them in the garbage, doing all of that, right? Like that's just like one example. At one point, like a lot of fear kind of started rising around like, automated vehicles like going to replace like the or disrupt the trucking industry, right? So what's going to happen to those individuals like who are like actively and like working on those areas today? To Haresh's point, I think like everyone needs to kind of get to that mindset that like change is coming, change is already here. We need to adapt.
One thing I wanted to say, Yuresh, is that it's a controversial statement to make. Like every person at work is using AI for productivity, right? Basically helping them do the development. They are kind of diminishing themselves right now, right? Because they are in essentially training the AI to do what they're doing. That's one of the, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? You need to use it, but you can't use it too much. So you guys have any thoughts around that? Like what should come out of it?
I would actually take it from a positive side. Like, so for anyone who's working long hours because of time constraints, because they have like a lot to get done. Leveraging AI could like reduce that time. So you are still responsible for getting all that work done, but you are just like accelerating it. Like something that used to take like 12 hours a day, you could cut it down to like about 8. So that doesn't necessarily mean that like you are getting obsolete because of that. Like it kind of helps you in the long run. But I think there's a bad side to it. Like if you really look at it from the other side of like, that's kind of like how I look at it. But it is controversial for sure, right? Because I've had like clients talk about this topic openly, right? Like, because what does it really mean in getting productivity increased by AI? Does that mean that someone used to take 100% of their time, now they are only needed like for half of that time because we can do like the rest with AI? Like that is a controversial topic. I think it'll have an impact. We'll see more and more baseline coming out of the impacts of it. We are still, I feel like we are a bit up on the early stages of that bell curve, how it is getting impacted.
I think the flip side, while we see some negativity, is I think if we all start adopting it, right? I think there's a fear factor first, right? With every change, we first get into some fear aspect. But as I mentioned, after some time, when we start working with these tools side by side, rather than giving some prominence, I think more prominence is given to AI than the human factor. We have a lot of creativity, so I think these tools, if you use it for brainstorming, right? If you can use it in terms of helping you do, as I mentioned, the boring work, right? And to Yuresh's point, right? If I had to spend 10 hours to complete that task, if I'm able to even save 2 hours, that is helpful, right? And I think from organizations' perspective, they need to look at it as a productive tool, intelligently used. And imagine possibly we can serve more clients and maybe we can give better outcomes, right? It's a different thinking, right? And also clients may also have great expectations because now they also know, now the workforce that the providers are also having these particular tools, right? So I think now you need to up your game, right? It also means, I think, with agentic AI, Yuresh, what you talked about, some of those risky jobs, dangerous jobs with drone technology, AI, and all of that, I think we've not really looked at some of the benefits, right? Say forest fires, which are quite challenging. With the new robotic drones and AI, they can go into dangerous places and protect the humans. Was that possible earlier? No. So I think we can look at new use cases, new things, and I'm sure the human ingenuity that will bring new jobs and roles. And I think in every era that I've read through, it has been a fear factor. Then suddenly, we come up with something new. So I thought I'll share that perspective also on the positive aspects we can get out of it.
Yeah, no, great perspectives for sure. I think that's kind of like a good segue to our next subtopic too, right? How to future proof your skills, right? And I think like anyone who's already in the tech industry is directly or indirectly kind of getting kind of absorbed into the world of AI, right? Like, because either they have enough knowledge around like the benefits of AI so that like they would start using it, or like it is kind of mandated, so to speak, for a lack of a better term, by like the work environment, right? Like how can we kind of, what kind of advice can we give to just like an overall audience, right? Like on how to ways to kind of future proof like your skills for that future.
Maybe I go this one first because I'm going to just mention as a light thing, and then I'm sure you can go deeper, Harish. Is that I feel like this age of AI has created more demand for those who have the breadth of knowledge than a depth. Because gone are the days where if one person gets specialized in one area, they earn the highest money because that particular skill is absolutely needed. There's nobody else can do, but AI can go deep down right now. But the breadth is where, like, I need a caching solution. So these are the technologies that are available. These are the pros and cons. So basically, they can come up with the architecture in mind and basically understand what are the elements needed. So I feel like it is increasing the need for the breadth knowledge in the development area than the depth. The other one is, this is going to be very basic, communication. This is going to make communication skill even more necessary because it'll require people who can story tell clearly to the leadership, because instead of saying I typed it in and something came out in AI, but they should be able to articulate the story, the problem, because even AI needs that storytelling. Because how good you are with storytelling AI, the better it can understand you and give you what you need.
Yes. And I think for me, simply said, curiosity, right? One of the important things is if you're curious, you have an open mind, right? That's what's required. Even before starting work, I think from the younger people, right? They need to start using these tools, right? In a way that they will complement each other, right? And sometimes the risks, Shan, you mentioned, right, is everybody may now seem to be an expert, right? And then, but the difference is, as I said, some aspects you need experience, right? So the positive thing is, rather than going through a lot of books and going through the traditional way of searching the internet and trying to find and seek this information, I think now the data is at your fingertips. However, it will give you data based on the questions you ask. Think about it. If you ask the wrong question, or if you are not asked it in the proper way, it might even hallucinate and give you something what is seems to be right. Because the generative AI nowadays, right, not like the earlier chatbots, if it didn't know, it will say I don't know. It might make up things. So I think the good thing is, don't take everything that's given to you. It also means, I think they use this term prompt engineering, etc. For me, asking the right questions and re-asking those questions and getting some useful output and then mastering something and applying that intelligently is something we all will have to learn, right? It's a skill that we'll have to learn, which we are not taught. And that rote learning memorization, the importance goes away, right? So it's an interesting time. Yuresh, what about you?
It is for sure. Yeah, like I mean, like just to add to what Harish said, like one thing I do like in terms of since you mentioned prompts, right? So there are like these a lot of support material and resources around this on like what type of effective prompts that you can use for certain things, right? Like so, someone has already kind of done this research and like kind of put these together in a very effective way. So that itself, like you are kind of leveraging that to kind of serve a purpose that matters to you, but still in a more efficient way. So that might actually eliminate some of the hallucinations or like a negative response that you might get because of like a trial and error that you are trying to avoid. It is very interesting. It is evolving. I think in terms of future proofing yourselves, the one thing I think we covered this at the beginning too, right? Stay up to date. Read articles, get to know what type of advances AI is making. You don't necessarily need to know how it works, but the important thing is how you can leverage it for anything, like your career, your personal life, anything in between. With that, like I think we can move to our final segment, which is basically as leaders, right? Like how what type of advice can we give them to basically set up an AI augmented workforce in terms of setting up a company, setting up teams, doing consulting work, whatever that might be, right? Like project development, vibe coding, anything in between. Let's kind of focus on the leaders and kind of talk through what type of advice or suggestions we can give them.
I think now these are boardroom conversations. That's the good news, right? AI is a subject, and upskilling, I always say, starts with you first. So whether you call yourself a leader or running a team, first you need to get your hands dirty with these tools, understand its power rather than listening to what others say. I think Yuresh, you pointed earlier in the earlier segment about individual upskilling. Peer learning is also something that we should do, right? I mean, think about it, right? When we used to study, we bounce ideas. So, there are different experiences, different tools that we are using if you can share. But as leaders, I think you need to lead by example. And in the future, everything will be sprinkled with AI, as they say. I think it's very important that the leaders set the tone. They themselves upskill first. They make sure their teams are also trained, right? Training is necessary. You cannot just tell the individual, go figure things out. Formal training, if they can make that available to them, it helps them, right? Start. There's this concept of the super worker, right? But superworker doesn't happen automatically, right? It requires step-by-step processes. And you are talking about organizations. One of the key things for me is making sure we use the right tools for the corporates. Imagine you're sitting on a wealth of data that is very unique to that organization. Imagine your workforce going and using and putting that data on a public GPT, etc. So I think we need to talk about setting up good guardrails, a trustworthy AI framework, right? I always say any organization will have a business strategy, right? But now it's important to have what we call an AI strategy. Why? We are going to use AI, data, and all of those tools. So you need to set procedures, policies for the workforce. You need to give them safe tools to use. You should encourage them, and also not only you get them to use the tools, make sure you review their output and appreciate that, right? A lot of leaders get people, their staff to use different tools, but still want to see the data in Excel, right? Doesn't work, right? So these are some techniques they can use to make sure at an organization level, if you're an engineering company, encourage them to use these coding tools to accelerate, to do testing, all of those things faster, right? And making sure that you're AI ready. So that's something that's happening around, but in different regions, Shan and Yuresh, adoption levels are different, right? So I think from the boardroom onwards, if they set the tone, the leading organizations are doing things better, others will follow.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that the adoption. Some of the conversations I'm having with some of my clients, they are struggling with how to calculate ROI around this, right? Yes, I mean, I think we all agree that it'll increase efficiency or productivity, right? But how do you really quantify it? So, for example, one of the clients is trying to figure out should they enable Copilot for the entire organization, right? And these things are not free. They are going to cost quite a lot, like from an organization point of view. And like this applies to like a lot of tools as well, around automation, productivity increase tools. How do you really quantify? I think like going back to like the boardroom suggestion, that's like a definitely like an angle or a metric that companies need to figure out on how to effectively calculate it. Then it'll be easier to kind of justify out of this tool set, we could focus on XYZ tools for the next year and so on and so on for the next few years from a roadmap rollout point of view. I think that is an important aspect that leaders and companies need to think about.
And Yuresh, you brought up a very common problem that almost every company is facing is that ROI discussion, right? I can say that my own company, they are looking for statistics around how the Copilot is going, how many lines of code, he created. Surprisingly, it is more like how many lines of code he deleted than adding new, which is also a good indication that it's getting rid of unnecessary code. But there is a conspiracy around it that, as a leader, I get to hear these things, is that developers are afraid to be reliant on Copilot because the leadership gets the statistics. Like if a person is like 90% on Copilot, it's like, do we even need the guy? So that's the fear they have. Like I'm going to use some other tool. I'm not going to use the Copilot because too many eyes on it. So it creates a problem because leadership is truly want to come up with ROI, but they cannot get that because developers are afraid to use it. So it's kind of a friction. That's one thing. Other thing, going back to what Haresh was talking about, flipping the pyramid upside down, I just wanted to say the opportunity here is that I'm pretty sure you can relate. Like developers come up with shiny tools all the time, but the business is the one that says, reality check, we don't need that, we don't have a problem for it. But this is the first time the top and the bottom are itching to use, right? Because the top level wants to use AI to come up with new features, and the workforce is also interested in getting their hands on. So I think it's a great opportunity to do things like hackathons from a leadership point of view, to bring ideas from the employee base, give them tools, like you said earlier. But at the same time, we should not be in a situation where the tail is wagging the dog, right? We need to think about a problem that we never thought could be solved. Now with AI, we can. So we need to start with the problem still, in my opinion.
Yeah, and leverage like the ideation sessions that are being offered by software vendors. Most large scale software are kind of getting into this AI powered mode, right? And they are to like come demonstrate their capabilities,
Yes.
all what they're trying to roll out in the future. I think take advantage of those things. You will learn things, how to kind of think forward and how to kind of leverage this software in the future.
So, Yuresh, I think you brought a very important topic. And the way I look at is, as I mentioned, there's different adoption levels. And when we look at certain leading organizations who have done it a bit different, they're seeing a bit more success. And maybe we can take some cues from that and then we can see what works for us. I think we should not go by the trend rather than what they looked at it is simply, are we going to use this for experimentation? Do we give to help them do that certain task more efficient? All of us, if we think hard, we can do something better. So, for example, certain organizations take about their research, right? Analysts can spend significant amount of time going and researching certain areas. Now, if we can get uh, agentic AI and others to do that base research for us, right? Bringing more, I would say more than insights, the actionable insights. I think a lot of us, I think we see a lot of dashboards. We are overwhelmed with dashboards, too much graphs and beautification, but we don't know what to do. So I think that's why I think the training is very important. If there is a culture, you mentioned about co-pilots and other solutions, where you can do it is you can pilot them first. So for example, why not start with our marketing team? If you want to generate images, right? Early you need to wait till a web designer, graphic person. Now the individual can generate multiple ideas, quickly brainstorm, even send it out, take the reaction, etc. So it's useful if you can start small. We talk agility, small use cases, quick success. Even leaders need to know some may fail, but that's quite fine. That's called experimentation. But see, boosting the productivity can be in many ways, right? If you can write more concise, specific reports rather than 100 pages, that's going to help. Imagine now we are on this particular podcast. At the end of the podcast, as meetings, if you can generate the requirements, we can generate the meeting minutes, the action items, which we may have to do manually. It can be done now, right? So those are some of the aspects beyond, how much time you save, etc., are going to be looked at. And we are seeing when they identify the use case, ROI can be calculated, and we encourage, right? What we talk about, building a business case, right? Because what happens is you, again, as you said, the shiny objects are being provided without understanding what it can do. And then they look at it as a cost exercise. So if there is a objective of improving your top line, reducing your bottom line, or seeing efficiency improvement, then you should go for some specific use case. And then we can measure it over time, right? And things that have worked well, we take it forward. Things that don't work out, we let it go. But still, I think you have more to gain rather than just using for the sake of using. So hope that kind of gives some conversation around, organizations have adopted that, and we can apply that to others who are skeptical or who are trying to look at metrics in the different ways that may traditionally make sense in normal ways of projects.
That's
That's very
some
well
great,
put.
yeah, very well put and great thought process there, Harish. I think with that we can wrap up our session for today. Just to quickly recap what we covered, we started with talking about like the AI landscape today, how AI is making waves across like various industries, what type of disruption it has and it is bringing to skills and roles, what it means to stay relevant in the age of AI, future proofing your skill set, and finally, we talked about suggestions and strategies leaders and organizations can leverage around AI. If you like to stay tuned for these types of topics and learn more, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Harish, thank you so much for joining us and providing all the valuable insights. We look forward to having you back to talk about like more interesting topics in the future. With that, I want to open this to like our audience to comment and suggest things around what you have come across around staying relevant in the age of AI. With that said, we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.